It is with great pleasure that I welcome you all again to our virtual space on the opening day on the 21st Settimana della Lingua Italiana nel Mondo, dedicated this year to the celebration of the 700th anniversary from Dante Alighieri's passing in 1321. I would like to consider today's talk dedicated to Dante and physics a kind of keynote for this week, as we will mostly try to look at Dante's work from the lenses of other arts and disciplines. As tomorrow we will investigate the influence of Dante on vocal music. Wednesday, we will focus on Dante's echoes on Andrea Zanzotto's poetical work, while from our website, you can access a virtual exhibition of young artists challenging themselves with Dante's iconic portraits. And lastly, still from our website, I invite you to explore how performing arts, namely contemporary dance company Artemis Danza, chose to interpret Dante's Inferno. I would like now to warmly welcome and thank Beatrice Fazio and Tanvi Gandhi for having accepted our invitation to present here their project, Dante in the Lab. Welcome, Beatrice. Welcome, Tanvi. I'm very happy to have you here with us. Beatrice Fazio has completed her BA and MA at the University of Rome La Sapienza and is now a PhD candidate at the University of Chicago's Department of Romance Languages and Literatures. Her research focuses on the cultural, philosophical, and political paradigms regarding the making and reassessment of Italian tradition. Specifically, she is studying the intersections between Italian humanism and Romanticism with a frame of reference ranging from Petrarch and Machiavelli to Vico and Leopardi. Her interests include, as we will see today, medieval science and philosophy, the connections between political theory and aesthetics, and intellectual history. Tanvi Gandhi holds a BS in physics from the University of California, San Diego, and is now a PhD candidate and Eckhardt Scholar in the Department of Physics at the University of Chicago. She works in soft condensed matter, studying the properties of granular materials from an experimental point of view. Her current research focuses on the local contact interactions that arise in driven granular systems and macroscopic impacts of these grain-scale particles. She is a 2021-22 graduate fellow with the U Chicago Art, Science, and Cultural Initiative, and that's where this Dante in the Lab project originates and comes from. So it's now time to dive into the lab with Dante, Beatrice, and Tanvi. But let me briefly point out that Dante in the Lab is an exploration. Let me tell you why Dante in the Lab is so meaningful for us. And it is so because it's an exploration of the mutual influence between contemporary physics and medieval literature, as it investigates the physical mechanism that lay down the topology of Dante's Inferno, touching the concept of entropy, gravity, order, and chaos, thus expanding our intellectual horizon to new areas of synergy between fields often considered mutually exclusive. After this maybe too long introduction, I would like to leave the floor to Beatrice and Tanvi, but before that, let me remind you that this webinar is being recorded and we are being streamed live on Facebook right now. The video will be available in a couple of days on our YouTube channel. And I welcome you, invite you to type your questions in English or in Italian, if you like to, using the Q&A tab, as we will have a short Q&A session at the end of the presentation. Please, Beatrice and Tanvi, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Luca, for this introduction, and thank you for putting this together. We are very happy to introduce our work today here. So I will start from a very general introduction as well, and then get into more details about our project. So regardless of their background, we know that readers around the world are still amazed with Dante's work, and we are celebrating the anniversary this year. We all probably know that the poem is an allegorical journey in the realms of afterlife based on the medieval vision of the world. So in this poem, written in the first person, Dante describes his journey through hell, purgatory, and then his rise through the heavens of paradise up to the Imperium and the vision of God. When I was preparing this webinar, I wondered again what defines a classic. So why the Divine Comedy is considered one of the most important classics of all times, and why classics should be read today in the most advanced of the technological eras. And I asked Cora what makes the Divine Comedy a classic. Quora is a platform. I don't know if you're all familiar with this, but is a platform where users can post questions and answers on any topic. And Quora groups the questions and answers by topic and allows users to vote or add comments. So this user says that the comedy has a prophetic quality, which is something that people always emphasize. So in a way or another, Dante anticipates, predates a lot of concepts that will be discovered and explored centuries after him. So he, without, Tanvi, can you go back to the previous slide? So he alludes to two passages in Paradise, but we're not looking into this in detail. And saying that Dante basically anticipates these channels of virtual realities from his point of view and his area of expertise. So in other words, Dante is one of those authors who really looks ahead. That's exactly what the Italian writer Italo Calvino addresses in his book, Why Read the Classics. He writes, a classic is a work that constantly generates a pulviscular cloud of critical discourse around it, but which always shakes the particles off. So in other words, borrowing the language of physics, Calvino wants to say that a classic has never exhausted all it has to say to its readers, even if it bears this aura, this particles of previous interpretations. But each reading and rereading offers as much of a sense of discovery as the first reading, not necessarily because the classic says something new to us every time, but also because it helps define us as readers in relation or in opposition to it. Today, we discuss Dante's understanding of physics. Just to give you a preview, Tanvi and I, with the support of the University of Chicago and the Art and Science cultural initiatives, have started this collaboration that explores Dante's physics through medieval perspectives and contemporary perspective. So Dante offers a rich description of physical phenomena, such as gravity, the mechanics of motion, light, optics, and includes precise descriptions of landscapes. We have rivers of boiling blood, a desert of scorching sand, a frozen wasteland. So we began the collaboration by asking what is the purpose of studying this phenomena and literary spaces today? What is the relationship between Dante's knowledge, which is an experimental knowledge conveyed through figures of speech, and the modern knowledge of science, which is a knowledge of testing and making experiments in the lab and communicating results. Most importantly, how can insights gained through modern physics can help us illuminate the text a little bit more, and vice versa, how can the text help us understand the physics of today? So we can try answering these questions by taking a journey into the past and explore the physics of Dante's comedy. So this is Dante's universe. And it's Dante uses Aristotelian physics, which is the physics of Aristotle combined with the understanding of the adaptation by Ptolemy. A major difference between Aristotle's physics and modern physics is that Aristotle's physics encompassed the entire natural world. He did not separate the study of living things, biology, from the study of the heavens, astronomy. There are two in this universe, this medieval universe. There are two separate realms: the terrestrial or earthly or sublunary, and the heavenly or superlunary. The earthly region extends from the Earth, which is at the center of this universe, to the sphere of the moon. And the heavenly region extends from the sphere of the moon outward. So this is very far from what we have today, right? We have a model of the universe which has the sun at the center, not the Earth. We don't have different spheres. We don't have the extreme limit of the Aristotelian universe, which was the sphere of the fixed stars. But we should try to change our perspective for a second and think that at the center of this universe, there was this spherical Earth. And Aristotle claimed that this universe is eternal, having neither beginning nor end. So no act of creation was like brought the universe into being. And you can understand why Christians for a long time tried to disprove the Aristotelian view. Dante doesn't believe that the universe has, Dante does believe that the universe has a beginning and an end, contrary to Aristotle, and believes at the center that the universe is spherical with a static Earth at the center. So the Earth at its center has also Lucifer, who dug the hell with his fall. So Dante and his guide Virgil go down, following the various circles of hell, reaching the center of the Earth, meeting Lucifer, and then they rise to the Earth's surface at the antipodes, where they find the mountain of purgatory. And then after his journey through purgatory, Dante rises through the heavens of paradise in the company of Beatrice, Beatrice, no longer in the company of Virgil. So from this vision, now we have the vision of Dante's universe in the comedy: Inferno, hell, purgatory, and paradise. Let's go back for a second to the terrestrial physics. So what happens on Earth? Aristotle speaks of four basic elements that form everything on Earth: earth, water, air, and fire. There's also a fifth element, ether, that was assumed to fill the space above the moon, and Tanvi will talk about this more later. And each of these elements has a natural motion. So earth, water, air, and fire can go either up or down. Actually, earth and water go down, while air and fire go up. So to make this simple, Earth naturally goes down. If you drop a rock, it always falls down, because the rock is made predominantly of the element Earth, and the element Earth seeks to reach the center which is its natural place. Water is less heavy than Earth, but tends to go down as well. In fact, indeed, if you drop a bucket of water, the water always moves down. I think it's the thing is different for air and fire. The natural place of air is above water, so its natural motion is upwards. If air is in a place contrary to its nature, like for example in a cave placed underground, it can cause earthquakes. Dante describes this phenomenon in Purgatory when he talks about the tremor of the earth, and he compares this phenomenon to what happens in Purgatory, which is the next slide. And when a soul completes its purgation in Purgatory, the mountain trembles, very much like the earth does when the air tries to escape from a cave placed underground. We can move to fire, which is the lightest element, and of course tends to move up to reach its natural place. If you strike a match, the flame always goes up, showing that the fire is lighter than air. For example, to explain this phenomenon, Dante uses the topic of love. We are in Purgatory, and he asks his guide Virgil, what is love? Virgil explains that love is the cause of all human behavior, of our good and bad actions. So love is the soul's inclination toward another being, and the soul, our soul, is driven by the desire to possess the object of its love. He says, then as fire moves upward because of its form, which is born to rise to where it may last longer in its matter, so the captured mind enters into desire, which is a spiritual motion, and it never rests until the beloved thing causes it to rejoice. To describe the desire of the soul as a spiritual motion, Virgil refers to the movement of fire. So as fire goes up, because it's the lightest element and because it's absolutely weightless and would always rise toward its natural place above air, so does the soul, which will always rise up in a spiritual motion to reach its object of love. From these examples, why these examples are important from the point of view of physics? Well, because Dante uses natural phenomena or things that are directly and practically observable in everyday life, and he uses these examples of the four elements not just for the sake of poetry and not just to convey theological messages, but also to deepen our knowledge and our understanding of science. Note that by physics in the Middle Ages, we mean Aristotle's account of the natural world. The word physics comes from the Greek physis, which is not usually translated as a nature. So it is remarkable how frequently Dante refers to Aristotle theory, but the theoretical knowledge is always filtered through the lenses of experience, pretty much like Galileo or Newton 400 years later will do. The knowledge gained through experience of phenomena that happen in this world around us, like modern scientists and physicists do today. We now will move from terrestrial physics to a more abstract but very cool topic, which is the physics of light, that Tanvi will explain and illustrate for us.
Okay, so as Beatrice described in great detail, Aristotle believed in a universe which was completely occupied by these fundamental elements. But there's a fifth element, which is the ether, and it's lighter than fire, and it fills up all the space between the celestial bodies. So anything that we would call vacuum today, Aristotle assumed was filled with this invisible and infinite material that did not interact with matter. Aristotle believed that light was a form of energy, which traveled as a wave through matter, much like this sound wave that we're seeing here. I'll talk about that more in a second. The ether was conceived as a medium for light to travel because it was assumed that light needed this medium in order to travel. It was a way to explain why light from the sun was able to reach all the way to the earth through what looked like empty space. When we think about light as a disturbance through an ether, we can think about it as we do sound waves in air. The air, as you can see, is compressed and expanded like an accordion as the wave passes through it, and it needs a medium in order to propagate these pressure waves. It can also travel radially from a point source, and this is how Aristotle and everyone else until just about 100 years ago thought that light also behaved. Today, we know that light does not need a medium to travel, and the ether does not exist. Whereas sound is a pressure wave for which matter is needed, like the cute cartoon on top, light does not need a medium. It's a transverse wave composed of energy, and it's a disturbance only of energy. And so it can travel through vacuum, no problem. The only thing is we can't visually detect it until it interacts with matter. And by interaction, I mean reflection, refraction, and all of the things that we need in order to make an image. We're able to see objects because of the light that bounces off of them and reaches our eyes. Space is full of light, right? But it looks dark because there's no dust to reflect the light and form an image. And this light can reach us through the vacuum of space from many light years away. This allows our modern telescopes to collect information about distant galaxies and also clues about the earliest moments of the universe right after the Big Bang. But Aristotle, as well as Dante, definitely believed in the ether hypothesis because it remained popular well into the 19th century, until Michelson and Morley attempted and failed to experimentally confirm the existence of an ether. A fun fact, Michelson actually founded the Department of Physics at the University of Chicago, which is where I live. So they failed to confirm the existence of an ether, and it was only about 100 years ago, and after dozens of such experiments, that the physicists finally gave up on the idea of an ether, paving the way for new physics, like Einstein's special relativity. It was around the same time that quantum mechanics was developing, and light was finally understood to behave like a wave that's composed of individual quantum particles, which in 1926 were named photons. But Dante's elegant descriptions of these observed optical phenomena held their ground for a good 1,500 years of theoretical and experimental investigation. Well, Dante for 700 years, but Aristotle's idea of the ether was common and well accepted right until 100 years ago. So as we can see, the ether theory worked just fine for many centuries, and it was the popular way of thinking about light when Dante wrote his comedy. Dante also thinks of light as a form of disturbance in air, as a form of energy. He provides rich descriptions of everyday optical phenomena where light interacts with matter, and analyzes images created via reflection and refraction. One such example comes about in the mirror experiment in Paradise. So as Dante's as Dante, moves along on his journey, his vision improves progressively because he grows spiritually. In paradise, Dante and Beatrice are in the heaven of the moon, and Dante asks Beatrice about the dark spots on the sun. What he notices is a lack of uniformity on the moon's surface, which we now know are craters that are created due to collisions from other bodies. But remember, Dante thought that light needed a medium to travel, and so he thought that the spots were provoked by alternating density and rarity of matter. And because the ether was not uniform, but over the long distance from the moon to the Earth, he thought that maybe that was sort of causing these dark spots. But Dante shows his strong understanding of the way reflection works via this 3-mirror experiment. To show Dante his error, Beatrice proposes this experiment where 2 mirrors are placed side by side with a third between the 2 and further back. A candle is placed behind the performer, which is Dante here. And here's a slightly more scientific image. But yeah, the observer here can observe that the reflected brightness is constant in each mirror. So we get a middle reflection that's smaller than the other 2. And as we know, mirrors can create images that are smaller and larger than the actual object that they're looking at. But he also notices that the middle image is not less bright. So Beatrice corrects Dante by showing us that light can travel long distances and maybe create smaller and larger images, but it doesn't lose its brightness. So the dark spots on the moon are therefore not caused by this non-uniform distribution of matter, but in fact from the fact that the surface of the moon is covered in craters that are produced from collisions with other celestial bodies. The 3-mirror experiment is impressive because even though Dante has this wrong hypothesis about light traveling through an ether, it shows that he does understand the principle of image formation and the way that objects can appear larger or smaller, depending on where the mirrors are placed. We see this today all the time, for example, in our cars, in rear view mirrors. As a scientist, I find Dante's meticulous observations and this description of a very reproducible lab experiment like we might do today very fascinating. While the scientific view of light has changed a lot over the past 100 years, our everyday experience of it has not. Dante's writing on optics really show off the sophistication of this wave theory that really held up for such a long time.
Well, I think we can take a step back and return to hell. We have tried in our collaboration, Tanvi and I have tried to study this connection between physical phenomena and poetry. So how is the physics engraved in the poetry? A case for this interplay is in hell. You can see right now the map of hell, and in that little circle, Dante and Virgil in the dark wood starting their journey. Hell is organized in 9 circles where sinners are punished in a fashion fitting their crimes. And Dante meets Virgil in the dark wood. They travel through hell, and they meet Lucifer at the bottom, as we mentioned before. And it is important to remember from the physical point of view that hell, that the circles represent a progressive increase in wickedness. The crimes become more and more serious as we progress from the top to the bottom, and a progressive decline into disorder. So we have this relatively calm state at the beginning, and as Dante and Virgil progress towards the bottom of hell, we are as readers are likely to encounter a lot of chaos. In the case that we want to examine now, we are in hell, and Dante describes the arrival of this monster called Jaren. Jaren is one of the many monsters of Inferno, as you can imagine, and carries Dante and Virgil down into the abyss from the seventh circle of violence to the subsequent eighth circle of fraud. And Dante and Virgil are at the edge of the cliff, and they're kind of suspended, and they wait to see what emerges from the abyss. They expect to see some new thing. Indeed, Virgil announces the arrival of Jaren, the beast who bears the pointed tail, and they must fly to the next circle on the back of this monster. And once Dante and Virgil are on Jaren's back, before starting their downwards flight, Virgil asks Jaren to fly in a spiral to make great circles. And this flight is precisely a description of what in physics is called the uniform circular motion. And you have to imagine that Dante, in this gliding flight, experiences a sensorial deprivation, since it's a flight in complete darkness, and he can't distinguish anything in the space around him. He knows that he's moving downwards, and he knows that Jaren moves with constant speed. He says he basically swims in the air, and he flies making these ample spirals. In the same way, the narrative, back to the correlation between physics and poetry, the narrative as well moves in circular motion, going back and forth before announcing Jaren, and let the reader see how it looks like. Tanvi, I'll pass it over to Tanvi, who will explain what uniform circular motion is.
Yeah, so the Jaren's flight is this interesting sort of spiral motion, right? And in its simplest form, it looks like uniform circular motion. So that's when a body travels a circular path at a constant speed. It's what you have to do when you want to merge into traffic, from like a little roundabout. And we see it everywhere. Some classic examples are carousels and playgrounds, and vertical loops and roller coasters. The spiral pattern of Jaren's flight looks very much like uniform circular motion, and it's similar to the pattern traced by a particle on the surface of the ocean. So think about a rubber duck bobbing along on the surface of the ocean, where the waves are kind of calmly moving it along. You've probably heard of Newton's 3 laws of motion, and these describe how forces interact with objects to incite motion. Today we call this classical mechanics because it's 400 years old. So that, and our most modern types of mechanics are quantum and different. But this is a long time after Dante, and it's really interesting that Dante is able to describe this uniform circular motion very elegantly without having all this framework from Newton. The 3 laws of motion are kind of the backbone of classical mechanics as it stands today. And both simple circular motion as well as this Stokes drift that I just described with the little rubber duck can be explained via very simple classical mechanics. But we didn't do that until recently, and Dante is able to write a graceful description of these phenomena without having access to Newtonian structure. So now we've talked about Aristotelian physics, we've talked a little bit about ether and light, we've talked about Jaren's uniform circular motion. But the thing that we really focused on at the end of our project and in our movie is this idea of order and entropy as we navigate through hell. So I'll let Beatrice tell us a little bit about what that looks like.
Yes, I will try to be brief because I don't want to keep everyone for too long. So we really focused so far on entropy in our collaboration. But before introducing this concept that Tanvi will discuss, I will try to say why we decided to focus on entropy. So we concentrated on the analysis of Dante's hell, because we noticed that Dante's hell is a progression into disorder, is a gradual decline into chaos. The last monster, the final monster that Dante and Virgil meet is Lucifer, Satan. So we are in the lowest region of hell, which is the core of the universe, as we have seen before. There is a frozen lake that forms through the tears of Satan. So you have to imagine Lucifer as a medieval Batman. Is a giant with three faces, with bat wings, masticating in his three mouths, the sinners Judas, Brutus, and Cassius. The first betrayed Christ, the second and the third Caesar. He doesn't speak. All he does is chewing and batting his wings. Lucifer is trapped from the waist down in the highs. So we were expecting Tanvi, from her perspective, for example, expected to find at the bottom of hell this super hyper chaotic region, as a lot of readers of the Divine Comedy expect to find. Also, Lucifer is quite different from the tradition. Historically, illustrators of the comedy have always represented Lucifer as a depressed demon, almost apathetic and indifferent. This is not what Dante tries to communicate. Although Lucifer dwells in a calm and silent region of hell, completely frozen. He's, after all, a fallen angel, the most beautiful angel who rebelled against God and lost grace and beatitude forever. He embodies loss and alienation. Alienation because he would not belong to this place. He's an angel. So what happens here, Dante and Virgil must progress from hell to purgatory. Of course, that Dante has no idea of how this will go. So they first climb. They climb first down Lucifer and then up Lucifer. And he says, and when the wings were fully open, he took hold of the furry sides from tuft to tuft. Then he descended between the thick hair and the frozen crest. So Virgil climbs through a hole in the central, in a rock, turning around. And Dante is afraid, from his kind of naive, very mundane point of view, that Virgil is going back through hell. But both the poets find themselves on their feet, standing on the other side of the world, on the opposite hemisphere. And they passed the midpoint of the earth. And Dante says, where is the ice? Where is Lucifer? And Lucifer, how is he fixed so upside down? And how in so little time has the sun made the passage from evening to morning? And Virgil says, you were on that side while I descended. when I turned, you passed the point toward which the weights all move from every direction. So they have passed the center of the Earth, which is the embodiment of gravity. And they now are on the opposite hemisphere. It's the southern in the Earth, and Dante simply is kind of shocked of seeing Lucifer's legs upside down. So we have seen how hell is not just a progression of gravity. The crimes and the punishments become more and more serious, but also Lucifer is the embodiment of physical gravity, being stuck at the center of the Earth. I let Tanvi quickly explain entropy, and then we'll show our movie at the very end.
Okay, I am going to introduce the concept of entropy so that I can walk you through, this particular intersection of Dante and physics that we focus on in the movie. I am going to be as gentle as I can. Okay, very, very broadly construed, entropy is a measure of randomness or disorder in a system. It's the number of ways that a system can rearrange without changing its energy. So how much freedom does a system have to change what it looks like? In more simple terms, a system with high entropy is one with very high disorder, like children running around in a playground or molecules bouncing and diffusing around in a gas. A system with low entropy has low disorder, and you can see that in the sort of crystalline structure of ice, for example. A brand new pack of cards that's perfectly ordered has low entropy, and then when you shuffle it, its entropy increases because it's more disordered or chaotic. The other thing that entropy does, and this is called the second law of thermodynamics, is that it prescribes a direction in which we're allowed to move. And so this is true also in hell, right? Dante and Virgil have to travel downwards. They can't go back up. And so entropy is very similar, where it kind of forces us to go only in a certain direction. The second law tells us that the entropy of a system can never decrease. It can either stay the same or increase. So this tells us sort of which processes are physically possible and whether they are reversible. And so as Beatrice described a minute ago, the circles of hell are arranged in orders of increasing entropy. So right at the top, things are relatively calm, and as you go lower and lower, the circles get increasingly turbulent. And so gravity, as we showed, is a nice candidate to describe this sort of ordering, right? A direction in hell. But so is entropy, and entropy gives us something sort of interesting to work with. But as we saw in the ninth circle, everything is very icy, and I just explained to you that corresponds to low entropy. So we went from a place of high entropy to low entropy, and I also just told you that's not physically possible. So the ninth circle kind of kills our dreams, right, of sort of looking at entropy as a candidate for an interesting way of looking at hell. So this seems impossible, and that stresses me out. And it also shows up in the poem, where the pace of the poem changes dramatically at this point. It seems to sort of break this pattern that we've established so far. But also it kind of opens up this opportunity for us to change our perspective a little, to help us think of ways where we can reconcile this broken pattern in the poem and in our description of it. Maybe the lowest region doesn't have lower entropy. Maybe it only appears to have lower entropy on the surface, all the while concealing an underlying chaos. This fits in nicely with the poetic interpretation, because we have these sinners, right, trapped in crystalline ice. The ice is tricking us with this apparently low entropy, but underneath there's all these sinners providing plenty of chaos. So what we tried to do is to find an example of a physical situation that also allows us to fix this problem without destroying the second law of thermodynamics, and maybe repair this little break in our understanding of what seems to be happening. And we did that via an experiment, which I'm going to show you now. So what you're seeing on the left is a video of tiny micron-sized particles. To give you a little sense of scale, a millimeter is made of about 1,000 microns, and a human hair is about 20 microns thick. So it's right at the edge of kind of what we can see with our naked eyes. And these particles are tiny little plastic beads. They're called colloids, and they're suspended in water. And this video was taken under a microscope. And as you can see, they're randomly distributed, and they're running around, right? And so this is quite a chaotic system. There's no sort of order to it. And then what we do is we add a bunch of super tiny particles. These are nanometer size, so they're 1,000th smaller than these microns, and no longer show up. So we can't see them in this image on the right, but you want to imagine that all the empty spaces are filled up with super, super tiny particles. And as we can see, what's happened here is that the larger particles have aggregated and crystallized, and it looks like a more sort of ordered system, right? It seems like we've lowered entropy and broken the second law. What we're seeing here is actually called a depletion interaction, and it's driven by what's called an entropic force. I can explain that a tiny bit. So when you think about sort of these large particles running around, right, they don't overlap very much, and they leave plenty of empty space. When they come close together, like this figure on the right, there's this overlap volume where other tiny particles are not allowed to go in. So when they, run around and they bump into each other, for a second, they produce this situation where there's nowhere for other particles to stuff in. What happens here when they sort of closely pack like that is it gives the tiny nanoparticles in the background plenty of extra room to run around. And so when they're running around, they go super crazy. That's a high entropy situation. So what we see when we look at it is this crystalline, orderly kind of state, but underneath, secretly, there are these, evil little nanoparticles running around, causing all kinds of trouble. And so what we've described here is a system where there's apparently high to low entropy, but what we're actually saying is that it only looks like the law is broken. In fact, the ordered state has a secretly high entropy. So even though this process looks illegal, actually no rules are broken, and we can all rest easy. And similarly, in the lower region of hell, we want to look at it as a surface of well-behaved and crystalline ice, which is concealing some kind of underlying evil, which are the souls of the sinners that are trapped underneath. Hopefully, I didn't lose everyone. Okay, so we have this, increasing entropy through hell, and we have this pattern that we said is broken in the final circle, in the final lowest region, and we have a resolution. In the movie, which we're going to show you in a minute, we explore this journey via a narrative, via language, and I'll let Beatrice introduce the movie a little better than I do.
Yes, so the movie, while we are working on on the one hand, from an academic point of view, we're trying to investigate this the hell through the concept of entropy, which can be easily applied. I say easily, but Tanvi probably doesn't think the same, to this realm of Dante's comedy. On the other hand, part of our collaboration was meant to produce something creative that is accessible to the public, to the general public, not only to academia. So we decided to make a movie that replicates this phenomenon in hell. So we have tried to communicate the idea about entropy in Dante's Inferno as an entropic system. So Dante's language and rhymes reproduce this progression, and so we have decided to write a script that actually remodulates these features, and follows the story of a couple going through their circles of hell as they end their relationship. Just to give you a little preview, the actor in the movie is a Dante scholar and professor, while the actress is a physicist. And I will let you Tanvi play the movie so you can all see that
Have you seen the students' papers?
Check the nightstand.
No, I checked. They're not there. I never lose things. Damn, what the heck? My Dante class finishes at 2, and then I'll be at the library.
Oh, can you remind me to go grab some cake when I'm done at the lab, and can you get the wine?
Why don't I take care of both? What's the occasion?
You do remember we're having dinner with my parents tonight, right?
Damn it. Yes, of course. How could I forget? What are you looking at?
Nothing. I just remembered the dream I had last night.
Was it a nice dream?
No, it was a surreal, random. This winged figure, I guess he was a god. Anyway, this god was carrying me naked and asleep, and then he awakens me and feeds your heart to me.
Sounds like I read aloud too many student midterms.
I was eating your bloody heart and you were terrified.
Surprise, surprise.
Doesn't he believe that morning dreams are prophetic?
He? Dante? What are you talking about?
There are some things that can be found only in books, but sometimes I dream they can be found.
I guess that the connection through Facebook and a lot of things just are maybe slowing the movie.
Seems, are we back?
I think we can try to play back.
I think we're.
Never mind.
Okay, I'm off. See you soon.
No,
Don't
it's
forget the
still
wine.
same.
You know I won't.
It's still the same.
Mm-hmm.
What's the issue?
It can be the connection or the file is big. I don't think it's about the file because we played it before in presentations. So
I'm just gonna try it.
I was eating your bloody heart and you were terrified.
Surprise, surprise.
Doesn't he believe that morning dreams are prophetic?
He? Dante? What are you talking about?
There are some things that can be found only in books, but sometimes I dream they can be found in reality too. Never mind.
Okay, I'm off. See you soon.
Don't forget the wine.
You know I won't.
Screw you.
Can I talk to you for a minute?
I have some time before starting class, and I found your note. Is this how we're going to be interacting with each other from now on? Notes?
What do you expect me to do? Start another conversation? After what happened last night? I'm just a man. You called me slothful, inert, that I'm not spontaneous, that I can't make decisions. Well, I made one.
I thought we were getting better at working through things, that we were coming to an arrangement.
No. Wait, last night was different.
The other night, Michael, you know me. You know I get furious, but then I get over it.
You can't see how many things are hidden behind the veil of words. Last night wasn't just about slamming doors or plates. You've always been quick to get angry, but your rages and temper tantrums are becoming legendary. The chaos is too much for me. Your words had so much gravity.
Gravity. Do you know why my words hurt you, Michael? It's because they're true.
as every time you're hurt, you start staring into an abyss,
But the abyss merits a hearing, not a dictatorship.
I work with words. Words for me are like particles for you. They might seem insignificant, but collectively they form reality. They form the abyss, Emma. Your words were violent, heavier than the weight of the earth. Because you like to taunt me.
I'm not taunting you. Listen, this is hard for me too. After Max died, you became a different person. I know you can't replace a mentor like Max, but you have to start talking to people again. Okay, you can't keep getting lost in the woods and then expect me to come and save you. You need help.
some guide.
Max was my guide. Besides, I have a therapist. We have a therapist.
Okay, no, you haven't been to a session in months, okay? You need
To get your life in order.
My life in order? Oh, that's rich. It sounds ridiculous. You've worked on entropy your entire career. And you're telling me I need to keep my life in order? You taught me disorder is vital for change. Well, it's vital for me too. It gives me hope.
delusional hope.
I tried to resist the chaos for so long. I know it's easier to control your life when everything's frozen in place. Some things need to change. Stagnation is killing us, slowly. Maybe it's better we discuss this in person.
Why here?
I haven't been here in so long. Do you remember when we toured the observatory with Max? I felt like I needed to be here.
But you know I haven't been here since he died.
I think you need this too.
I'm sorry, this is just absurd.
What? To remember that this was where we turned a new page? This was a new start for us.
It was the beginning of our private hell. His death banished us down to the center of the earth.
Wait, do you think it wasn't hard for me to lose Max? To lose the only guide I've ever had in my entire life? When the dust settles and we stop running, I'm as lost as you. The center of the earth is a frozen desert and I feel lost.
I'm not wasting my time with all this. Why did you ask me to come here? To work on us? You've already made your decision, Michael. This isn't one of your books. There's no turning point in the plot. No more pages to be written. The damage is irreversible.
You know what really matters in a story or a poem? The unspoken matters. No, what you write pays justice to what you left unwritten. It's like a broken symmetry. Drives the narrative forward. You should know this as well as I do.
How can you come here as if nothing happened? If Max could hear what you're saying right now. You betrayed him, Michael. You stole his work.
Stole? I spent the best years of my life in this
You
work.
betrayed him before he died, just like you betrayed our marriage.
Can you keep it down, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. What would you like me to say quietly? That you cheated on me?
Keep it down.
That you manipulated me? That you idealized me like I'm one of your characters?
You're as guilty as I am. We're condemned to this hell together. But we do have a choice. No. We can either forget everything, listen to me, we can escape this hell and do some penance together. Or we can get stuck. Stuck in this frozen desert, end this marriage.
So this is why you asked me to come here? To coerce me?
No, Emma, stay.
No, you stay. I escape.
All right. So this is the. Can you hear me?
I think so. I think we're good.
Yes. So this is the end of our journey through hell today. And this is part of has been part of our project. We will keep going with the exploration of Dante and physics. I guess we can stop sharing and leave the floor to any questions, if there are any questions.
Well, first
So
of
I
all, I
will
would
pass
like
it
to
on
thank you both, Beatrice and Tanvi, for this enlightening presentation. We had, I think, we reached our scope, which was to, and also the scope, I suppose, of your research, was to raise curiosity and questions from both regarding literature and physics and arts. We even had a moment of entropy during the film screening. And, and so I will just, Laura is asking, I extending to you, Laura's congratulations for the presentation and for the movie. And she's also asking you, how come the most remote part of Dante's Inferno, where Satan is made of ice instead of fire?
That's a very cool and interesting question. Thank you, Laura, for asking us this. I think I can try to respond. So it's very interesting. So the entire Inferno is made of fire, if not of like landscapes that are completely different to ice. Ice is only present at the bottom of hell. Why? Why Dante evokes at the bottom of hell images of cold, death, and heaviness? First of all, the icy cold is the absence of love and warmth, which are both symbols of God. God is love and light. But one can say that the entire hell, the entire Inferno, is, after all, the absence of God's love. So this is true, but the lowest region of hell, Cocytus, is different, because is the region where the most serious sinners are punished, and it is frozen and silent, symbolizing absolute deprivation. I said it before during when I was commenting on Lucifer, that Lucifer is very alienated. In the Latin sense of the word, he doesn't belong there. He has committed the worst sin ever. So Dante draws this, there is a connection between cold and ice and absolute evil. So evil is not something, but rather the lack of something, the total absence of something. So evil is the not good. It is also interesting how Dante tries to incorporate this concept and actualize it through the rhymes. So the rhymes in this final canto, when they meet Satan, kind of import the cold to create a linguistic harshness. They become harsher, aspre, chiocce. So harsh rhymes represent as well like a mimesis of the rigor and cold of this frozen desert. I don't know if I answered it.
I will jump in and say it's a very good question, I think, because it's what motivated this whole project, right? It's why is there no fire at the center? And that's why we had to, come up with this little band-aid in the form of this, weird and wonderful experiment that helps us think about things in a slightly different way. But yeah, that was the motivating question for a lot of what we did.
Thank you. And Judith is adding, thank you for a very thought-provoking presentation. I've been unaware that Dante had a didactic goal in his work regarding science as well as morals. Also, I thought your choice of a couple for the movie was great. As a survivor of a marriage between a humanist, myself, and a scientist, I think that situation is a good illustration of personal circles of hell. Communication difficulties are endless and lead to suppressed chaos. So this is more a comment that I will follow up with a question from my position. Actually, I found very interesting to see that how Dante seems to me just not to be someone who repeats Aristotle's theories, but also he proves to be a very neat observer of the world around him. And then he must have probably, or if there is there any trace or notice of contemporary scientific literature that he would have access to, and in particular when he talks about gravity or the center of the world when it passes from one hemisphere to the other. Have you had during your studies encountered any text, any information about what Dante might have reached might have read during that time while writing the comedy? And the other thing, I find it very interesting how detailed Dante is in all these explanations and how he wants to be detailed. And is it something common in Dante's contemporary literature, or is it something new or specific and special about Dante in describing while he describes nature?
Well, it certainly it is special the way Dante does it. We know that the Divine Comedy is an encyclopedic work that doesn't talk just about physics as we explained today, but also about mathematics, astronomy, and natural science in general. So it is original in the sense that it filters all this theoretical knowledge that was very present at the time. These people were scientists. Dante himself was part of the guild of the scientists and the doctors. So he was trained in this stuff, and he has read teachers on optics and light. For example, not just Aristotle and Averroes, but also Robert Grosseteste and others. But the very impressive thing is that this knowledge is not just conveyed through poetry, but also it is really knowledge through experience. Like today, we watch a video on YouTube, a tutorial, when we don't know how to do something, and we need images because I'm going to say that we are a visual cultural, but we all know this. But we need it. We find it easier. And Dante thought, okay, poetry. Everyone does poetry. Actually, to convey these meanings and this knowledge, I'm gonna combine the rhymes with and theoretical findings with something very tangible that people can verify every day. And I don't want to say that this method kind of led people to investigate more into the phenomenological reality around us, but it certainly was part of the spirit of the culture that really started from practice, combining practice and theory. And this is how, after all, Galileo or Newton made their first experiments. I don't know if Tanvi wants to add something. This is maybe all I have to say for now.
Well, I mean, there's not much more I can say about that, but from the point of view of like history of science, right? It's really helpful to see kind of what the state of the art was then, And the reason we go back as far as we do to Aristotle is that some of these theories just worked so well for so much everyday stuff that until we had the technology to think about things differently 100 years ago, and even now in our everyday life, unless you're a scientist, you don't care about photons, and it doesn't affect the way that you live your life. And so like Dante's writing is really a testament to sort of how good some of these core theories were, and his beautiful descriptions of very reproducible experiments are something to kind of aim for, because we also try continue to work the same way, where we try to sort of document our work. I think also what's kind of special is back then in the Renaissance we had natural philosophers, right, where you're a poet, you're an alchemist, you're a scientist, you're all of these things all at once. Whereas today things are kind of more disjointed, and we're seeing, at least in physics, this kind of slow progression back towards natural philosophy, where we really like this idea of people having multiple sort of ways of looking at things and bringing them together. And so Dante is a very good example of someone we can look to for that type of thing.
All right, thank you very much. I think we're running a little out of time. So again, thank you very much, Tanvi and Beatrice. I wish you a lot of luck for your project and the movie. Hope there will be further development in this very interesting synergy between you two, between two scholars and two different field of sciences. I thank everyone for attending. I would like also to invite you to follow the rest of the program for the Italian Language Week, which also will culminate with a movie screening on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. An Italo-Swiss film, filmed by a Swiss film director of Italian language from the Canton Ticino region. And so I hope to see you all again on these screens very, very soon. Thank you again.
Thank
Thanks
you
for having us.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.